Okay, nobody got lost? Well, welcome. This is Eco-Social Innovation for the 21st Century. We are the CU Biomimicry Club. These are all our lovely panelists who will be introduced to here in a moment. And I think that we just kind of wanted to start this out by asking and try to take a poll of how you all heard of this event, just by show of hands. If you saw it on a Facebook event, if you saw a flyer or a poster on campus or otherwise. And then did anybody see an ad in the Daily Camera by chance? Okay. And then word of mouth? Okay, cool. That'll help us for future things. I think we wanted to start this panel out by just talking a little bit about biomimicry and what it is, and then lead into the discussion that we have planned for tonight.
I feel like a lot of you probably are a little bit familiar with what biomimicry is. I know some of you are friends and family, and I recognize a lot of you from past events and workshops that we've done. But for those of you that don't know, biomimicry is a very hot topic, as most of you are probably aware because you're all here. And it's based on the idea that nature has been going through cyclical processes of life for 3.8 billion years. And human trial and error is over like a super marginal time. Like what, our longest experiments are like 50 years long. I don't even know, that's just a random number. But nature has been doing thousands, millions, trillions of experiments with the ultimate failure, which is extinction. So all of these processes in nature have been streamlined, replicated over and over again, and evolved to many wasteless closed-loop systems. And there's a number of things that we can look at in nature to replicate those systems and apply them to human problems. And that's basically what biomimicry is. And I think my next slide here. You can make it go. Yeah, all of these biomimicry is based on life's principles, which are a number of things that hold true for all processes of life. And the easiest way to explain, I guess, biomimicry is by just showing examples. The first one is just a form-based example, and that's burrs. This is a pretty common one that most people give when they're explaining biomimicry. And that's, burrs are, you know, those things where you go out in the woods and you come back and they're all stuck all over you. And they're made of, the form of them is like made of little hooks and loops, and that's replicated in the form of Velcro. But that's just like the most basic example that we can give. That was invented many years ago, and since then we've like come up with far more complicated forms of biomimicry, expanding beyond just form.
So this is another example that's a little more modern. All over America, there are these giant domes of water that store hundreds of millions of gallons of water to be used for farms and people's water. And it gets really gross if it stands still, and the metal from it gets into the water, it grows bacteria. So they have to move the water around with these giant propellers. This is a ship propeller, I think, but it's about an equivalent size. And those are huge, and they're really heavy, and they cost a lot of energy to run, and they're really hard to replace. So this designer decided to try to take a different approach about this problem, and he, instead of asking how are we going to turn the water, he asked how does water want to turn? If we look to nature, what is the direction of water, and what does it just want to do on its own? And what he came up with is, if you look at water anywhere, it's going to want to do this, right? You pull the plug out of your tub, you see water coming down a waterfall. It wants to make this ubiquitous spiral shape, and this is an example of a nautical shell, which is the same principle that it's the path of least resistance for the water to move. So they did a pretty complex mathematical analysis and figured out what the exact geometrical shape of that spiral was, and created it into this 6-inch metal propeller. It's like this big. and they put it in the middle of the tank and it rotates all the water, and it's much more efficient, it costs a lot less energy, it's way easier to replace, and now this designer actually got contracted by the Navy to put these onto ships to make them easier to maintain and I guess just more efficient to use.
So biomimicry is sometimes perceived as like a radical topic, but in reality it's going back to our roots. It's coming up with what's much simpler than all of these clever things that we've like kind of clouded our vision with. But this kind of like, I would call it more radical thinking. But this kind of radical thinking is kind of what all of the innovators of our society are about. They're about not necessarily coming up with the fastest or the easiest way, but the one that's most beneficial for the most number of people, and that maybe is thinking about things in a completely different and, yes, radical way. So with that, I guess we will kind of begin our introductions to our panel and ourselves. My name is Elena Hansen. I am a third-year environmental design student. I found biomimicry in high school, I think, and I was just so moved by how differently we could be thinking about our problems and how inclusive we could be with our solutions. And I think it's full of examples that can be really inspirational.
I'm Dominic. I'm a third-year psychology major, and I think what attracted me to biomimicry initially is that at its very core, it's an empathy-focused design process where it's really about trying to remember that we are a part of nature and that we're not exempt from nature in the way that it works, which I think is at the core of a lot of these solutions that we've been talking about. And this over here is our biomimicry chair, Elliot, who has fearlessly put together this panel for us all with the help of many others.
Thanks. So, before we get started, a couple of sort of administrative notes about the panel. First of all, feel free to help yourself to all the food in the back. Everything's compostable, and we've got a little box back there for compost, so fill it up and we'll take it home. And then I just want to say how grateful I am to see everyone here, friends and strangers alike, and especially to all of our panelists who have demonstrated their commitment to improving the community in which we live. And I'm really grateful for all of you personally for being here. So now I'd like to introduce them. First, on my right, we have Sarah Dawn Haynes. Sarah Dawn is an environmental studies and geography graduate from CU. She's worked at the CU Environmental Center for nearly 10 years, and she identifies as a possibilities cartographer. As a personal note, I can tell you that that identification really rings true. She's been responsible for a lot of the best connections that I've made while I've been here, so I really appreciate her a lot. Next, we have Emma Ruffin. Emma currently works with C3 Boulder, a climate culture collaborative, and is dedicated to bring people together to collaborate around sustainability issues in Boulder. She's also a recent graduate from CU. Next, we have Raina Bryan. She's the director of Rainchild Design and the founder of Recycling is Sexy, which is a media platform which aims to shift consumer culture towards sustainability. Next down the line, we have Lindsay Loberg. Lindsay is the program director for Boulder Food Rescue, an organization that uses bicycles and bicycle trailers to redistribute food that would otherwise go to waste and feeds hungry, homeless, and low-income people, while also educating communities about food justice. Next down the line is Jordan Watala, and Jordan is an agricultural consultant who specializes in aquaponics and sustainable off-grid design. He is also the founder of Fair Chow Blanc, an organization that seeks to radically improve prices and access to high-quality organic produce and revolutionize permaculture practices for a new generation of farmers. And last but not least, we have Ryan Clark. Ryan was formerly educated in solar energy technology, then went on to study biotexture in Taos and the Earthship Academy, and then broke into permaculture in Boulder with a focus on water solutions. And he works with a guild called Common Earth and started Care Loom. So this panel is going to be 4 questions that will guide the discussion for the next hour or so, and then we'll leave 45 minutes until 9 p.m. for audience questions as well. So the first question is simply, what does eco-social innovation mean to you? And you can, for all these questions, feel free to answer in any order. You don't have to answer all of them.
Sure. I'm happy to go first. So eco-social innovation, I actually didn't really know what that was when you first prompted that to me, so I looked it up, although it's pretty self-explanatory. It's basically figuring out ways that we can come together, bring diverse communities together to work towards solutions based in collective wisdom and vision sharing, and basically the way that I see it, or the way that I hope that it can be depicted, is by breaking past the traditional way of acting, which is based in ego and self, and moving towards a sense of eco, which is understanding more that we are super connected and understanding how we can empower one another and build a sustainable future. Absolutely.
And I'll just jive off of that. So innovation, to me, I do some innovation consulting in Denver, and we work on the process of innovation. And innovation is about how can you meet a customer's emerging needs or an unmet need. And so how can we use things like biomimicry to design solutions that work not only for the environment and with the environment, but also help and empower people. So that's what eco-social innovation means to me. It's like coming up with real-world solutions that work for people, not only just in our old way of thinking where we actually enslave people, but how can we build up community, how can we empower people, and at the same time take care of the planet that we all need so much. So.
And to riff off of you, I think that a part of identifying needs and needs in a community is to approach a community to find out their own needs. And one way you can do that, I think that there is always a tension between the way things ought to be and the way things are. And there is the question, I think, originally asked about opportunities and leverage points, and I think that that's where the opportunity and the leverage point lives, right? Where this disconnect between between values of people in a community and values of the larger world, right? So I don't know. I've seen this in the work that I've done for Boulder Food Rescue, right, with the example of food waste. Like the production of it takes a lot of resources, and then at the same time, we throw away like 40% of the food that we produce, and at the same time, 1 in 6 people in this country and in Boulder County is food insecure. And that might mean, you might not know where your next healthy meal is coming from, or you might have to make other sacrifices to get healthy food. And so I think that innovation is like seeing the need, being able to know what resources are available and use them sustainably and efficiently.
Yeah, to keep it going, I would say that, for me, eco-social innovation sounds like a lot of the work that we try and do with Fairchild Blanc is to educate people, give them really the tools to use even just a little bit better, to take, some coffee grounds that they would have thrown into a landfill before and have them use in the garden, and just showing those little tiny things that lead to a really innovative lifestyle that can really work for everybody, and showing people that everybody can do something.
Awesome. I love what you brought up about how you were saying that the crux of the issue is, problem solution based. The crux of the issue is really like in the communities where these loops are dying, right? These loops have no completion. And for me, assessing an environment, especially a social environment with people. There's so many little circles that are popping up and within our daily life, and a lot of them are missing that closed loop solution. And so just being able to talk to the community about, what resources are lacking, what resources they have a lot of, and maybe they're not actually framing it as resources. This could be waste, and innovating in those ways, whether it's taking this compost and putting into a vermiculture project and growing worm castings, or in some of the biotexture practices, again, food 40%, building materials 40% of what goes into a landfill, right? And so that's opportunity where the problem is, and just being able to reframe that for the social environment, for those that are maybe a little curious and want to know more, and people that are clueless. I think it takes that action, not just the premeditated thought about what these solutions are, but just like living that solution. And socially, that can really help make that change by really representing the environment that you want to live in and creating that environment, so then people can see that door is open for them, and just really able to step into that role. Just innovating it with your best interest in mind, one foot at a time, and then people will begin to fall into place and realize that by you living to your highest standard of balance and being in equilibrium and harmony with your environment, that's their highest good in mind as well too, because you're leading by example, and it really shows people that it's okay, and it's all right, and if they're a little afraid or hesitant about making some of these changes, they can see you doing it in action, and if you can really enjoy that and embody that and live that and love that, then that change is so much easier, because you can be that guide and that mentor to make those changes with them.
I'll wrap up this question. Is everybody also able to hear anything okay? Good? Okay. Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this, and I asked the modern day oracle as well. Eco-social innovation. And I, think about this stuff a lot, but it's really embedded into how my worldview is already constructed, and it's feminist, and it's looking at the ego and the white supremacist narrative that I've inherited, and it's understanding my contributions, so that social part, and the eco part. We are so connected. I have a tattoo, and I realized it's hard to see. It's part of the Boulder Tattoo Project, and it says your hearth, your ecology, your hearth. Right? It's heart. It's earth, art. Here, art, earth, all in hearth. And your ecology, and then you were saying we're all part of this and embedded and interconnected in ways that we really can't even see, and we're starting to understand in a physics level. Mm-hmm. And so how we think about the butterfly effect, and this, all of our actions and behaviors, our assumptions, our beliefs, and our narratives, create this eco-social worldview. And then the innovation, I'm really geeky about these futurists. I had to bring books because it's all about these books. But I geeked out right before graduating on futurists, and I brought this to share because this is made or written by the Director Institute for the Future, and I like to say that the possibilities cartographer. So here we are right now in the present moment, and we're going out into the future. Okay, so when you're going out, you have what's possible, and we have what's probable or likely, and then we have what's preferred. And so with your clients, working to these preferred solutions, these preferred futures, where we do have people using the materials, practicing permaculture principles, it's just a way of life. And that we're using these tools like biomimicry to innovate and futurist thinking, and it's but also understanding our role in it. And it's a really wonderful worldview, eco-social. And they're two sides of the same coin. And every purchase I make, every interaction has an eco-social impact.
Can I rip off that?
Yeah, please.
Because part of that question, I do believe you talked about the opportunity or the challenges in the leveraging to meet that correct part of that question. Right. So you guys all touched on such beautiful aspects of this, and you had brought up the values and how important our values are, and we want to be able, like as a collectively, as a collective conscious, to shift our values in such a way where we're beginning to demand what is truly good for the planet, because that is what's going to shift industry. That's the lever that I see. Is the point that everything turns is at the point of purchase. So when consumers are more informed about the real impact of purchase of something, of certain material, or the value of material. You spoke to how people are getting more aware of, hey, this waste is valuable. It's not even waste. Why are we classifying this material as waste? So there's so much to be said to our values and to our understanding and our knowledge and our connectivity. So I just wanted to kind of bring some of that together. Jamming.
All right. Can you highlight something about the path, people, and experiences that brought you where you are now? And feel free to share stories of successes or setbacks if that's relevant.
I think what ultimately inspired me to begin this journey, and this journey is just going to continue. But when I was I was born into privilege as well, and have been feeling my way around in the dark, trying to figure out what that means. I'm becoming more aware about my place in the system of things and where that all lies. And I experienced this great shift, which was middle class family, doing pretty well, single child, all is well and good, to being homeless at a very young age. I actually had my spleen ruptured when I was 17, and I had a emergency surgery. I died, and I was brought back to life, and the world was anew for me. And I saw the value in so much more than the white picket fence, the college dorm room experience, and all of what the culture is trying to push you into this mold, so you can fit in with its design. But as we really come to find ourselves and really find our place in what is the future, we realize that that design no longer really suits us. And so I awoke to this experience of really realizing that life was extremely precious. And I went through this experience, this is 10 years ago when I was 17, and I spent from 17 to 21 homeless and really being immersed in a quality of life that I was very unfamiliar with and wasn't prepared for. And the culture never prepared me for it. My parents never prepared me for it. Nobody could. And reality hit me. And through that experience, I went through a really dark spell of not really knowing what to do and not having the tools. And then it finally hit me one day that not only do I need to acquire these tools, but I need to use these tools to unbuild this faulty design and paradigm that exists and puts people in these conditions that aren't even really natural conditions. Like scarcity is not a natural condition. Greed, war, that's not a natural condition. If you were to be living in an ecosystem that was fully thriving, you wouldn't encounter those things in the way that we do in our culture. And what inspired me to go to school for solar was experiencing poverty, experiencing just deep poverty and just really hitting the veil head on and just coming right through it and realizing, wow, like all this privilege and things I thought I was provided with are really illusions. And I really got hit hard with the reality of what the system is trying to do to our eco-social connections. And that inspired me to go to school for solar, because a large part of what the world's dealing with is this fossil fuel game. And we're all this electricity that we're trying to produce just to run our laptops and watch YouTube and play our music real loud and whatever, it is, and just not being consciously minded about what's entailed in those decisions and the impact of that. And so I started my journey, and that darkness I think was really necessary to bring me to the light and really to step into the role of being a peaceful warrior that's really standing on the front lines for that type of change, because I got to live it. And it's not just a decision where somebody was like, oh, like solar, that's a booming field, I bet I could make a bunch of money. That wasn't the decision for me. It was like, I see these broken hearts around me living in this experience, and also feeling my own brokenness because of a design that was placed upon me that I did not choose. And not only that design was not a closed loop, right? And so I got really inspired and really passionate to change that and be on the front lines of innovation, what that means, to really take that problem by the hands and turn it around. That part of the path I think is really necessary for people to really step into that role and embody the type of diligence and power and correct representation of what it means to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of keep what our good friend Ryan was saying going, I really think that those really are the experiences that people need to focus on with this whole changing of our culture, trying to make more biomimicry and permaculture practices mainstream, is that a lot of the reason why we're called to do this is because the system doesn't work for a lot of people. And a lot of farming practices and a lot of great ideas out there really kind of scour the land and do the opposite of what we're hoping for. I mean, I'm sure that whoever came up with DDT and Roundup and all these other things had some really nice intentions. They probably thought it would be a good thing when they were originally thinking about it, but weren't really thinking about the consequences, weren't really thinking about closed loop, weren't thinking about where it was going in the end and what's really sustainable and what's really going to work long term. And I think that without seeing the bad side, seeing how the system really doesn't work for people and really sort of bankrupts the environment and us as people, and allowing that to really come into you and seeing that that doesn't have to be how it is. There could be a future, and there will be a future where these practices really are mainstream, and everybody up here on this panel is an excellent example of that. I mean, the food rescue, the trying to make the things go on social media, the Biomimicry Club, everything that everybody's doing up here is a testament to that there's a demand for a change in how we do things, how we operate, both on the farm and in society, and making it connected. Because people want to know their farmers, they want to know where their food comes from, they want to know how it's grown and that somebody actually cared about it and was doing everything in their power to make sure that there wasn't waste and there wasn't some terrible downstream consequence to what they were doing.
I've had a very diverse professional background, and kind of surprised that I ended up here, because I was a high school teacher before I started doing this work, and it's funny that a lot of the things that both of you were saying kind of struck a chord with me, and like what that system was like. And I think the commonality is mass production, kind of like the mass production of humans into the citizenry, that I really found harmful, and I think that a lot of younger humans found harmful and really, really problematic. And I think another commonality is like the lack of humanity there when you try to because our society values production and does not value a lot of the things that we need as humans. And I took a step back from that and found myself here. And I think one of the things that attracted me to the work that I do now is the community. And I think that, like, in the work that we all do, I think community building is really important and relationship building is really important. And for our work to be sustainable, we have to build relationships with people. We have to be connected to the communities that we're working with, and we have to realize the assets in our communities. I think that it can be problematic when you're doing community work to look at the deficits in things, and can be self-defeating. And I think that, you know, if you are looking at doing any type of work that's represented up here, you really have to look at the assets and the possibilities. So,
It's true. So I'll give you guys a little background story because maybe it will resonate with some of you students. I got my engineering degree in 2008, and the economy was crap, and I really wanted to get in sustainable packaging, and nobody was hiring, and so I was a ski bum. Then I realized I needed more education, and got my master's in engineering management, and all that was hiring was oil and gas. And by that time I was super broke, so I had to get a job. So I started working for an oil and gas consulting company. And you could imagine how challenging that was, you know, doing something 9 to 5 and something you didn't believe in. And I did it for a year. I loved the people, I just didn't love the work. And it felt like my soul was dying. I was in the stream of fish in my car driving to work, and I hated cars. I wanted, it was so unsustainable, and I'm going to this job to spec out lines on stupid equipment that I didn't believe in. And I just had this message in the back of my mind, these fear-based messages of you need to have a job to have health insurance. You can't quit because you have to pay your credit card, So I was in that pattern, in that cycle. And finally, I had a friend pass, and it was just that time that I made the decision. I resigned from my position, and I went from on track for a 6-figure job. I was going to get a raise within 3 months, and I quit my job completely to build my own company. So I made the transition, and I shifted my life, and it was the best decision I ever made. And yes, it was scary. And yes, there was times where I was like, oh crap, what did I do? I have all my good old boys, they're sitting all fat and pretty and making all tons of money, and I'm on a bike, and there's sideways snow, and I hate my life right now. But it was so worth it, and I'm so glad I did it, because otherwise I would have died. Like, my soul was dying. I have a purpose, and I see what's going on. And you guys are all very conscious, once you learn things cannot be unlearned. And the more conscious you get, it's a double-edged sword. It's very painful, and you realize how much more needs to be done, and you want to wake everybody else from the dream. You don't need health insurance. This is the system that you're running this rat wheel. It's bullshit. Step out. So that was probably my most impactful or memorable experience of my big transition, and I'll never go back. I'll tell you that much.
Nice words, everyone. I really liked what you said about being a peaceful warrior, because I consider myself and the work that I do to be a joyful eco-warrior, and I think bringing joy to the table is so absolutely crucial, because as I'm sure any of you will agree, if you're working in this full-time or as a student, reading about it, learning about it, it's like a total inundation of intense, the future is heavy. And it can be easy to kind of fall away from the beauty and the abundance that we have, thinking about not wanting to get caught up in the disparity and the lack, and really looking at the deep abundance that exists in all realms of life. And just to talk about, so I actually this is what I get to do, I get to look for the abundance in Boulder. It's a really great job. Work with the Climate Culture Collaborative, so basically connecting all the different climate actors and organizations and institutions. And Boulder actually has over 100 different environmentally oriented organizations. And if anyone wanted to take a guess at the number of climate scientists we had, or have, it is
200.
3,000.
3,000.
Whoa!
Awesome.
Yeah, so that number is wild. When I was first asked that question, I was like, 600? I don't know. We live in this area where, there is this like wild amount of resources, and figuring out how we can really leverage these people in this community and really come together and not recreate the wheel. Like a couple of months ago, there were 6 different energy conferences that were happening. It's like, oh my God, my schedule is so full, and I'm sure we all feel the same way. And how can we instead have those 6 conferences or summits come together and maybe do 2 or 3 and really have a magnified impact, where we can get people communicating and breaking down silos and bringing creativity to the table. I know I'm totally getting off topic of what the question was.
This is great.
But I think
She's trying to say we throw a better party.
yeah,
Bringing joy into sustainability is critical.
absolutely, yeah.
I'm gonna take
Joy, and I think also really sitting with the reality and understanding that we are all in this together. And this is an intense kind of like struggle. I mean, I go through waves of feeling like so hopeful and then so scared, and it's intense. And I think like sitting with that and communicating through that with people in an open and honest way is like how we're going to build a more just and sustainable future together.
Yay! So for those who know me, I feel like you've heard this story. You know, how did you get here? How'd this happen? How did a kid from South Park end up on an eco-social justice panel? First generation student, and came down here to go to the Front Range, and made my way to CU in 2005, and before that I was listening to KGNU, 88.5 FM, 1390 AM, kgnu.org. And it's our local radio station. It's all volunteer run, and they play excerpts of Pioneers Sundays at 2. And so I started hearing this, and the topics, biomimicry, and this was in 2004, and I was just like, and then I saw someone wearing a shirt when I started volunteering for Wildlands Restoration Volunteers, another great organization here in town doing restoration and trawl work. And they changed my life in lots and lots of ways. And then I saw somebody wearing a shirt, and I was like, oh, I've heard that on the radio, it's really cool. Cradle to Cradle, William McDonough, biomimicry, mycology, mycelium, Paul Stamets, and mushrooms saving the planet, and I want to know more. And they, he's like, you should come to this conference. It's at CU. It's great. And so I spent, all the money I had. It was a lot to take off work then, and I went in 2004, and it changed everything. And then I started to volunteer my first day of classes in 2005, and met somebody who worked at the Environmental Center, and then the rest is history. And I just finished in this last October doing the 13th annual Front Range Pioneers Conference, and Pioneers is a national. And I want to say that I'm really glad I came to school here. I loved environmental studies and geography, but the things that I use and the things that have made the most difference, the places that I've gotten the language and the articulation, has been Pioneers and the speakers. And I really recommend going online. They've posted all the speakers, and they're brilliant, and they're things that you like, we should all get degrees in bioneering, you know? It's the only place I've had authentic conversations about race and class and eco solutions, and it's just really brilliant. It's an honor to work with the people. We had over 70 regional presenters there this last year. So yeah, I'm really, yeah. And I really, wouldn't be where I'm at and wouldn't have as many things to share with students if I wasn't a part of this and if we didn't have this in our community. And we have a lot of great stuff in our community. But this stands out as a really unique event to connect the dots, to see the systems, to see how things are interconnected, and it's game changing. These are not disparate problems. We are not. We're all connected. It's all relative, and I could go on and on. And students are always encouraged and welcome to come and find me and talk to me more and about things.
All right. How is religion or spirituality connected to what
Yeah, I'll riff off of that because it plugs right into what you were saying. Like, we're all super, super connected. I believe that is very true. We're all of one consciousness, and so I can look at each of you and see a bit of myself as well as just we're all in this together. One thing that is really important to me is purpose, and doing meditative type practices where I'm constantly coming back in and saying what matters to me, where are my values, because it will begin to speak through you. And where the magic happens is when you align your work with your values. That's when you get into that flow and life is just jamming. And also, I also believe in asking for things in the sense of if I'm wanting to do something and I don't know how to do it, first of all, you got to be really careful how you talk to yourself. You don't want to say anything of oh, I can't do that. That's me. You got to really take control of your mind and get into this mental dialogue of I can do it. And if you put these feelers out there, who do I need to know? What teacher do I need now? The universe will provide. And that's why I fundamentally believe that, and I've seen it play out over and over and over and over and over again enough. And I come from a scientific background, people, is proven. Guarantee. So do be really careful of how you're talking to yourself, and also just ask and you shall receive. I mean, it's work. It's not just gonna oh, shmi, I want a gold platter in front of me. That's not gonna happen. But if you're asking, well, who do I need to know? What resources do I need? What more knowledge do I need? What more connections do I need to make this happen? And you stay focused. Focus is another key thing. You can create anything. So that's kind of where my spirituality comes in with my lifestyle and living.
I wanted to just real quick get in on that because you said something. And it's the same. I say the same thing in a different way. And there's a little flyer with this in my office. You really want to align your thoughts, your words, and your deeds, or shit gets weird. It's like cognitive dissonance. So if you are behaving in a way that isn't in line with your values, maybe you haven't clarified your values, and but you're saying things. If you may be the kindest person to your friends, but you're thinking ugly thoughts to yourself, that manifests. That's not okay. And so aligning your thoughts, words, and deeds, and that really helps get you on that trajectory of the kind of person you want to be in this world. And it's been a really powerful tool for me to change my life. I mean, I'm raised by old hippies, cowboys, and bikers. This is not academia, not policy, not it's a different world. And so changing all of that came down to those. And I also there was a great panel years ago about green religion, and there's an academic study of the theology of the green movement, and it's not, earth practices or paganism, but it's just a deep, not that that's that's awesome, go hug a tree, but it's almost, I can't use disposable water, what do they call it, plastic bottles, anymore. Like I have to, that's against
It's
my
like
religion.
petting you backwards. That's how I feel
Yeah.
about it. It's like petting the cat back.
It
freaks me
That's
out.
against my religion. Oh! I brought a book of poems. My religion is earth, my religion is stone, and the earth reveals itself to me in sweaty epiphanies, something like that. It's great. Thanks. I love that question. There's too much I'm going to say about it, but I'm so excited to hear what everybody else is going to say.
Okay, I guess I'll go. For me, I don't really consider myself subscribing to any one religion or any one philosophy or doctrine. I'm really just trying to generally help the community and get people involved in permaculture and involved in all these things that can benefit their lives. And I really don't feel like you need any serious orthodoxy or, to really answer long, complicated questions about life after death. You can just help people and let that be enough.
I really have to agree with, both of the two most recent people to speak. I don't really see myself as having a religion either, but I really think that this alignment of your values and your actions and your work is really, really very important, and allows you to show up genuinely, which I think if you want to get anything done and be all right with yourself is very important. I think that it's necessary to be able to live your life and do your work and not have to turn your hat backwards for any of that. I feel very grateful that I've kind of stumbled into something where that's the case for me. I also think I get to work in food, which is one of, I think, the two things that I experience that are like religion, or like how I've heard other people describe religious or spiritual experiences are being out in nature and like sharing food with people. And I feel very fortunate that that is a part of what I get to do, because everybody eats, and so it's this powerful connective thing, and I'm really glad that the work I do has the potential to make people feel good in their bodies and nourish themselves, and that seems almost religious.
Spiritual.
And definitely spiritual, yeah.
I agree. Thank you.
There's something holy about getting in a dumpster. Not that you do that for work, but rescuing food in a dumpster.
No, it's true.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, there's another thing too I'd like to just add on that real quick is we are what we eat. We can't be anything else. And there's this interesting development we develop with plants. We've, what's the word I'm looking for? No.
Symbiosis?
Well, those are all great words, but no. We're developing with plants, and so part of what you're doing is like bringing people together. Oh, it's like it's gonna pop in my head like when you're talking or something. I'll just shout it out.
It's like what dogs and humans have done. We evolved together.
Evolve. Thank you. Evolve. So yeah, we're co-evolving with our plant species, this plant species around us. There's a lot of studies that indicate that, and they show that. And so what you're doing is it's not only just the nourishing of the body, but it's the direct connection. So you said, people get connected. They feel
closest to God or closest to the universe when you're in nature. But also when you're eating, you're very close to nature as well. It's another way of communing and evolving with that. So that's all. That's all I was going to say. Yeah, thank you.
So thinking about spirituality, I recently just watched Avatar, or rewatched it for like the millionth time, brought to tears for like the millionth time. And there's a moment in the movie where she's walking and she's like touching all the plants around her and they're like reaching out to her. And that is such a beautiful image, and I think that that is true. I mean, we are all connected on this like deep level. And so sitting on this panel together, we're all interacting with each other on a subconscious level. I mean, there's pheromones flying. I don't actually know if that's true. But what I do know is that a woman that I work with the other day was saying that we're not just working for the climate, we are the climate. We are what we're working for. And so when you make that connection, I mean, that is like a religious moment, come to Jesus moment, when you're like, wow, we are not only all connected on a human level, but also on this like deeper, ethereal, plant, wood, nature,
Glowy, floaty things.
yeah. And I think another part of what I do that's really kind of rooted in spirituality, rooted in religion, is this respect that comes to the table when we are approaching things with open arms. And I think a huge learning thing for me was being able to come with my agenda, kind of checked at the door, but I'm still able to see it, I'm still able to know what I'm working towards, but really listening to what other people are needing and wanting, and developing something that's going to work for everyone is going to need to come out of a space of co-ownership, and it's going to need to come out of a space of really hearing one another and respecting one another, and I think that's spiritual.
Absolutely.
I'd like to think it is.
Well, you guys have seen how far man-made things got us, so not much on the religious side, but I think there's definitely a very spiritual essence to a lot of this work that we do. I brought up earlier the shadow side of my experience, which was homelessness. But in permaculture, a lot of the times the problem is the solution. So, I was like, oh, I don't, not feeling like I had a home. But then it finally shifted, and then I was like, oh wait, like I'm not tied to any one place. Now I can go travel here and ask, the power of asking and like wanting to learn, and so I didn't have to be tied down to paying rent. So I had the ability to offer more volunteer time or take an alternative education course in a state that wasn't where I was moving around, and so that actually opened up a lot of possibilities, right? And so there's the power of great spirit at work. When I realized that I had nothing left of these things that I was trying to cling to, which were these man-made things, spirit showed up. I had no other option but to show up as well, right? And then I was so held in that, and that's a lot of what biomimicry is like it's consulting with the great teacher who is going to teach you everything about what you need to know, and there's no man-made thing that we can derive that's going to do it better than what Earth made, millions of years ago, and version 50.0 or whatever, it's always evolving and it's always meeting our needs and what's arising because of our creations that are diverging the actual path of how it's supposed to exist. And so like just welcoming the great spirit of things as all that man-made attachment fell away, and I began to realize that I was cared for and I was being held in that field of abundance by my willingness to want to be educated, by my willingness to want to apply these practices and and put it into action. Things start opening up and the doors start opening, and you can really fall into that groove and trust that. And for me, that's been that's been the great reminder, and that's been that lantern for me on my path, and just knowing to surrender, to get out of my own way, just to get out of my own way, so I can show up, and that's been really powerful, and biomimicry in a way is like practicing the Lord's work. Like you're getting all this super powerful info from the God, and you have to go put that into action, and you really have to live what's being preached and embody that. And, so it's been really uplifting in that way, because just so much has been relieved. All these old blueprints and cultural programs that I was born into, they don't have to exist once you can align yourself with the true spirit, great spirit, which is nature and my teacher. So it's been really powerful my student.
All right, we have one more question before we open it up for the audience.
I was going to ask, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I read a poem? Do we have time?
Of course.
Do we have time?
There's nothing but time.
Okay. This is Drew Dellinger's work, and Hymn to the Sacred Body of the Universe. Let's meet at the confluence where you flow into me and one breath swirls between our lungs. Let's meet at the confluence where you flow into me and one breath swirls between our lungs. For one instant to dwell in the presence of the galaxies, for one instant to live in the truth of the heart. The poet says the entire traveling cosmos is the secret one, slowly growing a body. Two eagles are mating, clasping each other's claws and turning cartwheels in the sky. Grasses are blooming, grandfathers dying, consciousness blinking on and off. All of this is happening at once, all of this vibrating into existence out of nothingness. Every particle foaming into existence, transcribing the ineffable, arising and passing away, 23 trillion times per second. When Buddha saw that, he smiled. 16 million tons of rain are falling every second on the planet, an ocean perpetually falling, and every drop is your body. Every motion, every feather, every thought is your body. Time is your body, and the infinite curled inside like invisible rainbows folded into light. Every word of every tongue is love, telling a story to her own ears. Let our lives be incense, burning, like a hymn to the sacred body of the universe. My religion is rain, my religion is stone, my religion reveals itself to me in sweaty epiphanies. Every leaf, every river, every animal, your body. Every creature trapped in the gears of corporate nightmares, every species made extinct was once your body. 10 million people are dreaming that they're flying, junipers and violets are blossoming, stars are exploding and being born. God is having deja vu. I am one elaborate crush. We cry petals as the void is singing. You are the dark that holds the stars in intimate distance, that spun the whirling, whirling world into existence. Let's meet at the confluence where you flow into me and one breath swirls between our lungs. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you very much. All right, we have one question left before audience questions, which is, what is something that you're itching to do but you don't have time for right now?